Well, hi, everyone. This is Michael, and welcome to the LoveWorks Dreamer and Doer podcast, episode number 51. We definitely know that you have plenty of great, fabulous options when it comes to podcasts in the podcast universe, but we really want to sincerely thank you so much for tuning in to ours. And it's at LoveWorks, we really believe that you are never too young to be a dreamer, and you are never too old to get started working on that dream.
That is for sure. And our hope with Dreamers and Doers is that each week our special guest is going to connect with you wherever you find yourself today. And they're going to inspire you to become the best version of yourself for tomorrow.
And you know, Carolyn, there is one fabulous way that you could become the best version of yourself. Do you know what it is?
Is it through personal growth?
You're exactly right. I'm sure that's what all of our students and viewers and listeners are thinking themselves as well. We really do believe that personal growth can be a blast. And Carolyn, I have a great quote for you to kick off this segment. Are you ready for it?
Go for it. Let's do it.
Okay, it's our Dreamer and Doers guest today. It's one of her favorite quotes, and it's by Alan Arkin. I just bursted out loud laughing when I read this. It's so true and so good. But says, no matter how much time that you spend reading books, that's me, or following your intuition, you're going to screw it up 50 times. Can I just add to that? Just keep going and never quit. Persevere, and you can definitely get there. I think there's a lot of truth in that statement, but we really do value personal growth. And what we love to do is we love to take just a few minutes and curate a few positive ways that you could hopefully integrate some of the things that we're talking about into your personal growth routine. So we'll curate positive and influential music, blogs, vlogs, books, organizations to follow. And today, we're going to recommend a few social media influencers, individuals or organizations that we think are worth the click or the tap. So Carolyn, kick it off for us.
For sure. So I've got a few recommendations here for you. The first two are actually kind of DIY home related, but also include some recipes. One is called Studio DIY, and the second one is called A Beautiful Mess. And these are two very much Instagram, but also Pinterest influencers who share about different ways that you can actually spiffy up your home and improve your mood according to the environment that you're in. And so what I love is that they're not offering these crazy, $500 to $1,000 home fixes, but rather really small, cute projects that you can do on your own. It includes things for kids, includes things for adults. Like I said, recipes, and I love food, so I definitely love following these people for their baked goods. And then I have one other one that I'd love to share about. This one's kind of a new and up and coming one called Okie Dokie Foodie. And if you follow me, this is not the same Okie Dokie Foodie that I run on Instagram, but a different one. And for this person, she's actually a traveling nurse. And very cool, what she does is that she goes to different cities and finds businesses, restaurants that have been struggling, particularly in the pandemic. She highlights them, encourages all these people to come, and she's been saving some restaurants all around Oklahoma City, San Antonio. Really cool what she's been doing, just because she's had to travel because of the pandemic, but she's also spreading some good and joy along the way, and good food. I mean,
I like it. You kind of gave us four. There was a slight plug, Carolyn, for yours. I definitely think yours is worth a tap and a click.
Oh, mine is fun. Mine is very much Oklahoma based. So if you're looking for some food recommendations, very local, there's quite a few on there.
Love it. Well, I'm going to rapid fire the first two and show you the third that I feel are worth a tap and a click. The first one is a shameless plug for LoveWorks, and it's a brand new one, and it's called Dreamer and Doer Podcast. That's our handle on Instagram, Dreamer and Doer Podcast. And this will be the one place that you can go and scroll and see all the world-class dreamers and doers that we've had the opportunity to interview. You're going to see pictures and quotes, also two great questions that we can dialogue with you. And quotes can be a part of this as well. So definitely Dreamers and Doers Podcast is worth the click and the tap. Another one, Carolyn, that you may be surprised that I'm recommending may be surprised because, truth be told, I'm an animal liker. I'm not an animal lover. I'm just going to get it out there. But this one is called, on Instagram, the handle is Harlow and Sage. And it's about two dogs. And I love why this started, which is about 8 years ago. And it was because the owners of Harlow and Sage thought that Sage was entering into the last year of its life. And so what they wanted to do was capture as many precious moments kind of near the end. And I got to be honest, I caught myself spending an extended period of time scrolling through the cute and fuzzy pictures, also with some really great captions as well too. I've got one more for you, and this is incredible. In fact, I would say that this story is almost mind-boggling. We have someone right now that's out in Utah who is really defying logic. He already wrote a book called Redefining the Impossible, and he is a triathlete, and his handle is Iron Cowboy James. And as we're doing our podcast right now, James is on his bike, and he's going to be riding 112 miles today. But here's the thing. James had this idea already after breaking a world record of 50 Ironmans in 50 consecutive days in 50 states. He presented an idea to his wife that he would do the 100 in 100. That's right. He would do 100 full distance triathlon races in 100 days. In the next 92 days, he will have accumulated a little over 14,000 miles, either by swimming, biking, and running. And I saw pictures on Instagram. They're doing a great job of just tracking every single day. So you can check out his reel, see him in the water, get pictures and quotes from him out on the bike and run. And they're providing all sorts of updates. And what I really love too is he's also doing this for a great cause. And so his goal is to raise money for an organization called the OUR, which stands for the Underground Railroad, that's helping kids that are involved in human trafficking. And so I love that he is defying logic. He's doing something really hard and almost impossible, but he's also raising money for a great cause. So definitely check him out. Those of you that are watching, listening, if you happen to have someone that you feel that we should tap and click on social media, please drop that in the chat box below.
That brings us to our roll call time. And so if you're out there, whether you're a student or a parent, go ahead and drop your favorite animal emoji, whether you're an animal liker or an animal lover. And plus, you can answer today's question of the day, which is, what is your favorite childhood book? My God, I'd be dropping a panda emoji right now. And my favorite childhood book, this is one from, I believe, the 90s, maybe, who knows, maybe it was earlier than then. But Rainbow Fish was my favorite book growing up, of course, because aesthetically the book was very pleasing to read, with all of the nice sparkles from the fancy scales. But I also love the message of it, of, you know, when you have something that is beautiful and valuable, that it is worth sharing. And that way you can actually see more beauty around you versus keeping it all to yourself.
Oh, I like that. I went back and forth on one of my favorite children's books, and it was a favorite as a child. It's still a favorite today that I read with my kids, and it's called Harold and the Purple Crayon. So I'd be dropping in lots of purple right now for my emoji. I would love for you to drop in the chat box below, what is one of your favorite childhood books that you grew up with? Dreamers and Doers, we're going to get this party started. Love to remind you, though, each week we have the opportunity to sit down with a different dreamer and doer guest, where they have the opportunity to share at least one of their dream stories. But we don't stop there. We really love to get into some of the fine details about the early steps that they took to begin reaching their big dream. And we hope that it's going to encourage you to get from the place where you are today to the place that you want to get to tomorrow.
And to warm you up for today's interview, we have a trivia question and a chance for you to win a prize. And so the first person to answer this question correctly will send a prize directly to your house. This one does get us ready for our guest today, and this one's fun. It is, Your emotional intelligence is also called this 2-letter acronym. What is it? So we're looking for just 2 letters today for our trivia question. First person to answer this correctly, hey, you'll get a prize directly to your house.
Well, Carolyn, let's get it started. Let's meet our dreamer and doer today. Her name is Renée Adams.
Renee is a children's book author and founder-owner of Calm in Your Palm, Hoppy and Poppie PinkCheeks, and Learn.Love.EQ brands. She and her team enthusiastically and diligently create and develop stories for children along with entertaining and relatable characters and products. The stories and products focus on the well-being and teaching children, and of course their parents as well, emotional intelligence and making learning fun. Renee is a certified Goleman Emotional Intelligence coach, and she's also a whole modern parent emotional intelligence collective expert. Super nice to meet Miss Renee. Hi, Renee.
Good morning, Michael and Carolyn. Thank you so much for having me on your program this morning. I love your podcast, Dreamers and Doers. It's fantastic, and I've learned a lot from your guests. So I really genuinely thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, speaking of those guests, we have a few mutual friends and colleagues like Armand McCoy, Brent Wheelbarger from Trifecta Communications, and also to Dan Tigert.
Yeah, we just discovered some of those this morning before we went live. And it's a small world, right? And so it's just amazing how we can have these connections from state to state. I'm in Colorado, you're in Oklahoma, and it's just incredible. And people come into our path along our journeys for a reason. And it's just so exciting to me when I discover new connections, and they're always meaningful. And so thank you for having Dan Tigert as a guest on your podcast before. And I'll be mentioning Dan. He and I are the only 2 people with Calm in Your Palm at this point. We do partner with outside organizations and teams of people, but to really gather the resources that we need. But Dan and I have been on this journey together, so you'll be hearing his name come up, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Well, I think it's evident, of course, dreamers and doers hang out in the same circles, you know, keep dreaming and doing together. Well, Renee, we love kicking off our interview this way because we are the Dreamers and Doers podcast, and we recognize, you know, the guests that we bring on are, of course, both dreamers. They're people who have had a big vision, but also seen this vision come to fruition. But we wanted to ask you, what do you consider yourself more naturally, a more natural dreamer or more natural doer?
This was such a thought-provoking question. And I really at first thought I would answer it as a doer. And I started giving it more thought. And I'm a very curious person. And so I Googled dreamer because honestly, I'll be honest with you here, I kind of thought that it would have a negative connotation. You know, that doer sounded to me like it had more positivity than dreamer. And so I Googled dreamer. It was hilarious when I found out. First of all, the top of the Google search, and when you're running a business, we're really discovering how important being at the top of a Google search is, because that's what people tend to click on and read. I learned a whole lot about Ozzy Osbourne because it's a dreamer, and really his life is really super fascinating. And so I read all about it on Wikipedia and other sources. I won't spend time on that. I scrolled down a little bit, and guess what came up? My personality type, which is INFP, which is introvert, intuitive, feeling, and prospecting. Mm-hmm. The nickname for my INFP personality type is dreamer.
Wow.
So there we go. I have to answer the question saying I'm naturally a dreamer. And if anyone hasn't done a personality test, this one is super quick and easy and so informative, and it's free on www.16personalities.com. Interestingly, Dan and I recently began working with Michelle Kopp in California for our social media strategy. And this was just this year, since the beginning of 2021. And she said, hey, why don't we just start off with knowing each other's personalities? She emailed me this link, and I took the personality test. Dan took it, and it had been years and years since I've done a personality test. And it's super interesting. So anytime you're working with a team of people within an organization, it's extremely helpful to know like what your personality types are and what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. Maybe you want to bring someone on the team who, for example, in our case, because Dan and I have very, very similar personalities, and neither one of us are very strong at being a strategist. So it's been very useful in so many ways. And it so happens that Michelle Kopp is a strategist. And she's super strong with developing strategy. And so it's cool. It's a cool thing.
Renee, you've taken our question about being a dreamer and doer now to a whole new level. And you worked in personality assessments, which I could not agree more how useful and beneficial they are. We'll definitely include those, a couple examples of them in the show notes. I love the fact, like you said, that a lot of them now today are free. You somehow worked in Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath. Just a side note, I have watched Black Sabbath with Ozzy Osbourne. That's a whole nother story for another podcast. But you mentioned you're a dreamer. You thought maybe at first a doer, but this may have been like reflective for you to even discover yourself. Can you take us back to that young dreamer and just tell us a little bit about your childhood, what it was like growing up, and you even have some examples of dreams that you had early as a child?
That is a great question too. I really choose to focus on fabulous childhood memories. Some of my favorite childhood memories are times at my grandparents' farm, Meemaw and Papa Rogers, and it was full of adventures. And I love adventure, and I would dream about adventurous things a lot when I was a kid. Like I've always wanted to race a Ferrari. And I haven't done it yet. Recently I found a place not too far from where I live in Boulder, Colorado, that I can actually go and I can sign up and I'll be able to race a Ferrari. And not race literally, but I'll be able to get behind the wheel and drive one. So, and that started when I was a little girl. And so on the farm, I would be able to just get lost. And in the hay barn, my brother, my sister, and I, we would find nests of black widow spiders, not such a safe thing, but always interesting to me. And my peepaw would let us drive the Jeep at a way too early age. And he would name cows after us. And we'd always go in the pasture and find our cow and check on our cow. So I have really great childhood memories of times on a farm and just really simple, like being simple. And my entrepreneurial spirit definitely came out now that I'm thinking about it on the farm, because I would gather pecans and I would put them in buckets and I would sell them for 35 cents or 50 cents, depending on how much I had cracked them and shelled them. And then I would go to the local little store and I would buy our Orange Crush sodas that we loved and grape soda. The chocolate soldiers, those sodas, I never understood why anybody would want to drink that more than once. But there were some people who worked on the farm who loved chocolate soldiers, and so I would get those. And so I really started some entrepreneurial things very young, at a very young age. So that being said, I also have overcome a lot of difficulty from my childhood. We moved every 2 years. And in the midst of these fond memories, my childhood is probably best described as a real mixture of love and chaos. And there was a lot of love in my home. No question, my mom and dad loved us very, very much. I also had to make sense of alcohol and drug abuse. And that has been a real journey for me in terms of what dynamics existed in my family that were not helpful to me or would be to anybody. And so to overcome some of those difficulties has been a large part of my path.
And Renee, this may connect back to, of course, why you are, of course, a specialist now in emotional intelligence for children. But I remember even reading, I think this is a quote from you about how, if young people and young children can kind of understand how to process these emotions at a younger age before maybe, now where emotional intelligence is talked more frequently, more commonly, that they won't have the same hurdles to overcome that maybe we have. So maybe, Renee, if you could talk us through what is emotional intelligence and why is it so important in that youth development?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. My framework is really from Daniel Goleman. He's one of the very most prominent pioneers of emotional intelligence. So since I have been through that particular coaching certification program, the model that I'll share with you is from Daniel Goleman's coaching certification process on emotional intelligence. And there are really 4 main areas of competencies. And emotional intelligence, unlike IQ, intellectual intelligence, can be taught and can be taught at a very young age. This is a new field. It's only been around for really 30, 35 years. And now that is long enough for Yale University and Harvard University and their early childhood development centers. They have done some very good studies that show the benefits of learning emotional intelligence, and preferably at a very early age in life. So there have been times that I've looked at a portrait that's hanging in my bedroom of me as a little girl, and I've wondered, what would have her life been like if her mom and dad knew these skills of emotional intelligence for themselves, and then of course for the family. It would have been so extremely different than what my reality was growing up. And so it's extremely motivating to me. And emotional intelligence is learning skills in the area of self-awareness and self-management, others awareness, and relationship management. And then there's lots of different competencies that can be studied. So the particular coaching program that I studied under is a 12-week program. And so every week, over 12 weeks, one particular competency under those 4 umbrellas is really looked at closely, like with a lot of questions that are great to reflect on. And there's so much that we can learn about ourselves and about our emotional makeup. And the key is absolutely awareness. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, especially if there's chaos in a person's life, sometimes it's very challenging to really be aware of what we're feeling inside and ask questions that are extremely useful, like what is making me feel this way, and also just a little tidbit, asking a question beginning with what can be a lot more useful than why. Mm-hmm. Instead of why do I feel so angry right now, what is it that has made me feel this anger or this sadness? And all emotions are okay. Mm-hmm. Positive emotions, negative emotions, they're all okay. And it's so useful and beneficial to accept our emotional makeup in life, and realize that everything is felt for a reason and can be expressed in a positive way that does not bring harm to ourselves or others. Mm. And so that's the self-management part of it. And then, of course, that spills over into our social relationships and our relationships on every level and in every area of our life.
Mm. Renee, thank you for sharing that. Daniel Goleman's done phenomenal work. We'll also include that in the show notes as well, too. So you took us back early and talked about these early entrepreneurial endeavors that you had as a kid and where you grew up. mentioned just through in talking about some difficult, challenging times that you had, and then began to get an understanding and gain an understanding of your own personal emotions, but you didn't stop there. You had a vision to do more, not just to help yourself, but to help others, parents and kids. And so can you take us back and to the beginning of when you had the idea for Calm in Your Palm, and also what drives the mission for it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking. Now that I think about it, this is episode 51, right?
It sure is.
So 10 years ago, this is just sort of interesting, I think, but 10 years ago is when I had the idea for my business, for my current business, Calm Your Palm. And I was 51 at the time. So I'm 61 now. Oh, actually, I will be 61 this year. But when I was 51, my children are over a pretty widespread of ages, so 33, 29, and 19. And when my daughter, my 19-year-old daughter, now was about 10, we were driving to a musical theater audition, and we were brainstorming in the car. And I was sort of at the closing point of my work and as a part owner of a home health and hospice business. And so I was looking and thinking and brainstorming about what I wanted to do next. And she was finishing up her voice warm up, and she had a voice coach out of LA. And so we always played her voice warm up CD in the car. And then there was a period of silence, and we were talking, and I said, how are you feeling right now? And she said, oh, I'm feeling a little nervous. And I said, is there anything that would be helpful for, these next 10 minutes in the car before you arrive at the audition? And so, and that took her mind off of it, so there's a little bit of strategy there as well. But also we started brainstorming ideas, and she said, Mom, I really think a book and maybe a blanket that goes with it would be, really nice, something that would help me feel calm. And so I got her all situated and signed in and everything. I went to a coffee shop and I started writing. And that was the very beginning. And that was 10 years ago. And I'm still just launching my business. So it's been like this humongous learning curve, and great adventure, and just a lot of twists and curves and turns in this journey of getting Hoppy and Poppie PinkCheeks launched, which came later. So but that's where it started. I went to that coffee shop and I started writing, and then I started signing up for writing workshops and how to hone in on the skill of writing a children's book. There's a whole lot more to it than one might think.
I was going to say, so I went from a car to the next day, a coffee shop, and then you just came out with this book and a blanket.
10 years later, yeah.
Wow. What would you say? I'm sure there's many, but you have a vision for a book. You have a vision with these different ideas. What was one of the hardest parts? Lots of us have ideas to do things. What would you say initially, if you had to go back, was one of the hardest parts to get it from your head to the paper and then to the next step? Do you recall that period of time?
Oh, I absolutely do. I recall it. And it's been an enormous amount of input from experts in different fields, and going to trade shows and just really taking in a lot of information and reading books and partnering with people who have skills in areas that I don't have skills in. And learning the business part has been the number one challenge, because I do not have a business background. And so I dream and I do. Sometimes a part of my makeup is to be an idealist. And so bringing the practical aspects of really and truly like building a business, my whole goal from the very beginning and dream and hope was to build a business and be able to sell it and put 100% of the profit toward helping the under-resourced children in our country. And so bringing that along the way to really achieve that and make it, successful and do that has been extremely challenging.
Wow. Well, if you don't mind, Renee, I'd love for us to get even more real for just a moment with parents, professionals that are watching, and then we'll indirectly speak to the hearts of our kiddos that are watching and listening as well too. But what would you recommend to students or parents who are struggling with processing their emotions during the pandemic? And I could go as far back as yesterday, thinking about a moment that I experienced with my 4-year-old, 6-year-old, and 8-year-old out on the trampoline, working on processing through emotions. I don't know if it had anything to do with the pandemic, but I'm sure that you're being bombarded with these kinds of questions. What are you speaking right now into the hearts of parents?
Conversations. Have conversations about emotions and feelings and what everyone in the family, including mom and dad, are feeling and experiencing. Oh, it's really very, very important for children to hear what their mom and dad are experiencing emotionally. And oftentimes in a home where emotions just live and exist and sort of just fly around all over the place without any structure, without any awareness, without any conversations about them. Oftentimes they're just acted out. Parents will act them out, children will act them out, and there's very little management of those emotions sometimes. And so being able to have a conversation about what the pandemic is causing emotionally for the family members is so useful. And then really put on your listening ears. Teach your children to listen and then understand what the other person is saying. And then parents, listen to your children. Ask them questions and help them process and give them a safe and constructive outlet to express those emotions. They're the negative emotions of anger, or primarily anger. We'll just zero in on that one. Mm-hmm. If a person is angry, sometimes that's one of the more difficult emotions to manage, right? And so, screaming into a pillow, punching a pillow, teaching children to manage more challenging emotions in a constructive way that doesn't bring harm to themselves or to others is extremely valuable. And just to accept them and be with them, right? Because the pandemic has caused our world to change in so many ways, and families are at home a lot more. Having a positive outlook is always helpful. Mm-hmm. To take some time to recognize the benefits and what positive outcomes have there been right. in the family from the pandemic, because sometimes we can actually, human beings in our brain architecture goes toward negative information and negative input first, and that's just scientifically proven. Mm-hmm. We're made as human beings to pay more attention to negative news, and so sometimes it takes a little extra effort to focus on the positive things that are happening.
Right. I want to ask you just one more question about talking pandemic and just some effects that we're seeing. I love what you said about having conversations. In your blog, you have a fabulous blog, Renee, by the way. Lots of great information. We'll, of course, include links for that. But you talked about screen time. And screen time has increased not only for kids, but also for adults as well, too. But you talked about the screen fatigue. setting in for kids, and you talked about the ramifications of that. Would you mind just expounding on that just a little bit, of what are some of these ramifications that you're seeing in kids?
Mm-hmm. Yes. In so many areas of our lives, balance is key. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to screen time and what we're paying attention to, and this can also spill over into areas of music. What music are we listening to? And to be aware again, awareness. Awareness is everything. So there's a quote by Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. Mm-hmm. So taking some time just to be aware of how much time are we spending on a screen, and what is the benefit of that time? What are we gaining from that? And what's the material and what are the messages that we're receiving from the screen time? Because you all have mentioned some fabulous influencers, social media influencers, and some awesome resources, Carolyn, that you've shared, and Michael, you've shared as well. So we can find some things that really enhance our lives on screens through Pinterest and Instagram, and make really great connections with screen time. So it can be a very positive thing. But again, it's balance. It comes down to balance, and also there are, for young children under the age of 3, there's some very specific guidelines on the American Academy of Pediatrics website about screen time. And so, there have been some great studies that have shown limiting screen time at the first 3 years of life is super important. And then having those relationship skills, face-to-face interactions is really important in building our relationships successfully with other people. So it's super beneficial. Again, those conversations that we have as parents with children go a long way. So establishing eye contact, teaching children social skills and how to communicate verbally and even non-verbally, their emotions and feelings is really, really helpful.
Well, I love it, Renee. You didn't just give an outright, like, this is how much time the student should be spending on there, but I love the intentionality behind it, and knowing that, of course, not everything that our students are going to be accessing, it could be positive, it could be negative, but kind of using that awareness and using the choice of it as well as far as deciding goes. Renee, we
love your word of choice. Yeah, yes. Choice is everything.
Renee, we've gotten to hear now about, of course, the last 10 years, what's been in development, and the passion that you have behind it, of course, has been driving that. Otherwise, we wouldn't see a Hoppy and a Poppy and a blanket today. So I wanted to ask you, what is it that you love that you get to do?
So much. This podcast, I'm loving this. I love sharing about emotional intelligence because it's the number one thing that I love doing about my work. And that is, I know for a fact, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that bringing emotional intelligence tools into the lives of children and their parents is extremely beneficial on so many levels. So it is proven that children who are taught emotional intelligence skills and how to be, again, in those 4 areas, how to be self-aware, how to self-manage, how to be others aware, and how to build positive relationships in their lives as leaders. And that relationship also, super important, is with ourselves. So, that self-awareness, it's really a relationship that we have with ourselves, and what does that look like, and what can we do to learn more about that and get curious about that. But I love sharing that and empowering others to accept their emotions, lean toward them with curiosity. Let's not suppress or try to run away or guard against negative emotions, but really get curious about them, and then following our own inner compass. And I love also the concept of values, and I love sharing about that in my work. And so helping people to identify, what are your values? Think about them, write them down, brain dump and write a whole bunch of values on a piece of paper, and then start honing in on, okay, which 5, start with 10, which 10 mean the very most to me. Mm-hmm. And out of those 10, which 5, and this is great to do with your kids too, if parents are listening, and what 5 are really the most important to me, and how do I live by those values, and how do they become a guide to my inner compass? Because like you said, Carolyn, choice is everything. Mm-hmm. And we choose our thoughts. One of the Daniel Goleman coaching tools is their 12 self-discoveries. And one of those 12 is that we don't have to believe everything we think. Mm. We have a choice about that. And so we have thoughts that enter our mind, but we don't have to believe those thoughts. We can separate ourselves from those thoughts, and we can examine them, and we can become curious about them. And that is very empowering. So I love sharing about that. There's so many things I would love to talk about, but I know you've shared with me your time schedule.
Renee,
those are some of the key points.
We absolutely love your passion. We're going to give you an opportunity after Q&A to be able to talk with us specifically just about the actual kit itself and all the tools that you have created. And I know there's other things that you're working on in the future as well too. So those of you that are watching, this is going to be an opportunity for you to be able to drop in the chat a question that you have for Renee. But Renee, we want to give you what we call our 60 seconds. And it's 60 seconds for you to be able to share whatever is on your heart. It could be a new project that you're working on, or you might have something specific that you want to speak into the heart of our dreamers and doers that are watching and listening. So Renee, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, set and go.
The dream that I'm working on right now is not only launching Hoppy and Poppie PinkCheeks, but also Airlets. And Airlets is a brand that's in the development right now. And the Airlets are 6 characters: dream, love, believe, grow, live, and lead. So that is something that I'm looking forward to entering, a new phase of that development. And the one thing that just pops in my mind is I would encourage anyone listening to filter everything that you're hearing and observing in your life through a lens of, does it produce shame, guilt, and fear, or does it show light and love? That's been really valuable for me. And so my dream is that messages of shame, guilt, and fear in young people's lives especially are replaced with messages of love and light.
I think, Renee, that is such a great question to ask ourselves, especially as we're talking about influencers and the things that we follow and the things that we expose ourselves to. Is it something that's actually giving us love and light, or is it making us feel ashamed about ourselves, maybe making jealousy come about, or whichever? But asking ourselves, what am I following right now? What am I allowing into my life? What am I reading? What am I watching? And how is that affecting me and my emotions? I love the intentionality behind that. Let's say it again. It all goes back to choice and what we're choosing to expose ourselves to. So Renee, what sound advice for me, for anyone that's listening, whether they're a student, a parent, a professional. And so Renee, thank you so much for coming on today and speaking to our hearts and also our minds. You shared so much great information, research-based, of course, as well, that is all about becoming a more well-rounded and whole person. So thank you.
Yes, you're so welcome. Thank you, Carolyn and Michael.
Well, Renee, don't go away too far because we're going to bring you back in just a moment. Carolyn and I are going to recap. If we can keep it to just one of our favorite parts of the interview, then we'll bring you back for question and answers from our audience.
Okay, thank you.
Carolyn, I think that we are going to be filling up our Amazon cart with a pre-order relatively soon again with Renee.
I agree. The preview that she gave of the airlets, I'm like, ooh, this sounds like it's Loveworks has their name all over it.
Sign me up.
Michael, this is always my hardest part because I have to pick one thing that I really enjoyed about the interview. And what I love that Renee just shared was just the mission behind Calm in Your Palm and the moments leading up to it. And I think it answers the question of why is emotional intelligence needed? And her story of her daughter, feeling anxious before a musical. And oftentimes, I've heard this is just kind of like, get over it. And, is that you'll eventually get used to it or whichever. And you're just kind of supposed to grit your teeth and get through it and hopefully, succeed. But I love the intentionality behind processing some of those emotions and asking not why, but what. I think is a really powerful question. A different way to ask is like, what is making you feel this way versus why are you feeling this way?
Is my camera on my notes page right here? Did you just read that from my notes, Carolyn?
Oh, my bad. It's so good.
I'm gonna tag off of that. I just love Renee, and I felt like the way that when she told this story, I felt like I was sitting in the back seat of her car, eavesdropping on this incredible moment with her daughter. And it wasn't about trying to write a book and create a blanket and tools and resources. That, of course, eventually followed and happened. But it was just trying to calm the heart of her daughter, that was experiencing some fear and experiencing some anxiety. I would, and I'm going to hone in on what you were talking about as well. And Renee was talking about just the importance of key conversations with your kids. And I started just thinking about, personally right now, I feel that I'm in a season of being a doer. There are a lot of projects, I'm sure, Carolyn, you may nod your head to this, that we are working on and that we're doing, and they're all good things. And so in a mode of doing, in a mode of being proactive, sometimes it's hard to slow down. And it's only in the times of slowing down, I think, that you can then really sincerely be in a place with the posture of your heart to ask those kind of thought-provoking questions. And then I think also just being appropriately transparent with your kids, and then in our case with our students, and even in how we're doing and how we are leading, and being able to just let them in and open up our vests, to our kids. And I feel like if we can do that and allow some transparency, it's also going to further then help and propel our students to be able to process, the emotions that they're feeling as well too. So such great stuff. I know we can go on and on, but let's bring Renee back. And I already see a couple of questions coming in. Hi, Renee.
Hello. How are you?
Oh, great to see you back. Renee, we have a really fun feature on our website where either students or course professionals that might not be able to tune into our live podcast, they may have to wait for the podcast to be released in the next couple of weeks on Spotify, on SoundCloud, and on iTunes. They can ask our guest a question. And so we have one of our students here at LoveWorks. Her name is Ella, and she has our first question for you. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, meet Ella.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 13 years old. My dream is to be a teacher. My question for Renee is, what was one big struggle you faced while writing your book and creating the interactive experience?
Thank you. That's a really, really good question. And the greatest challenge was learning the process of making every single word count. That was a big thing, because with a children's book, you really want to be concise, and you want to just keep narrowing it down and making that text so dialed in on every single word, and eliminating any word that's not necessary. So that was quite a process to learn that skill, and then finding a manufacturer for the books and for the features of the book. That was not easy. I really talked to a lot of manufacturers, got a lot of samples, and that took a lot of time to find the right manufacturer to make the books.
That's good. We got another question for you. This is from Jacob. They ask, how did you make the transition from working for others to creating your own company? And what was your biggest challenge there?
Yeah, thank you, Jacob, for that question. The biggest challenge for me managing my own company is how many hats Dan and I have to wear. So, and it's impossible to be an expert at everything, right? And so having the grit and resilience to fail time and time again and keep going, that has been a real challenge. But yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to own your own business, because the responsibility is great. It's all kind of on your shoulders as a business owner versus, working with other people. There's a lot of responsibility obviously involved. But that ultimate, that ultimate responsibility is typically not yours. If you have a business, it is.
Renee, we have one more question for you from Aaron, and this is before you go out and enjoy the beautiful scenery in Breckenridge, and then we'll go and enjoy the beautiful scenery in Oklahoma, but at least it's sunny today. This question from Aaron, it's all about motivation. So Renee, what keeps you motivated?
Aaron, what keeps me motivated is bringing value to other people's lives. And also, there's a lot of self-value too. As I work every day and we go through this process, I grow as a person, and I think, at the age of 60, I'm still growing in tremendous ways, and that keeps me extremely motivated. So the personal growth never ends, and it is exciting. That's your motto, right, for this podcast. I mean, personal growth is exciting. It's not always pleasant. It can be painful, but being with the pain is so valuable, and just working through the process. But I love helping others, and that's always my bottom line motivator.
I absolutely love that, Renee. Regina, we also see your question out there, and Carolyn and I will reach out to you directly. Renee, before we let you go, we would love for you to please give us a plug for Hoppy and Poppie. I have your kit right behind me here, and I have 3 kiddos. And probably one of the biggest challenges we have in our house is who gets to keep the box. I never know from one day to the next whose bedroom this box is going to be in. So could you fill us in with a few of the goodies and tools that you have in here for us?
Oh, thank you, Michael. If you need extra boxes, I can send those to you. Let me know.
Thank you. Or we maybe need I have 3 kids, so maybe a third character could be pretty please.
But in our gift box, and by the way, on Instagram right now, Hoppy, Poppie, PinkCheeks is the Instagram handle, and it's HOPPY POPPIE PINKCHEEKS. Hoppy, Poppie, PinkCheeks, and we have an Easter gift box giveaway. And so if you follow our Instagram, you might be able to win that gift box, and I'll ship it to you. But Hoppy and Poppie plush are in the gift box, as well as Patu, the blanket character, and then the 2 baby board books are Not So Scary and What We Feel. And the Not So Scary and What We Feel teach a vocabulary of emotions. And there is a sleeve of emotion wristbands. And those are 6 primary emotions that are great for babies and toddlers and preschoolers to become aware of. And so little kids can wear the wristband that has the emotion on it that they're feeling at the time: happy, sad, scared, angry, calm. And then they can also, just in their imaginative play with Hoppy and Poppy, and this gives empathy and others awareness. They can put the wristband that has the emotion that Hoppy and Poppy are feeling as well. So in the works, we're going to be coming out with a lot more emotion wristbands that go beyond the 6 primary emotions, and they'll have the other expanded emotions that the books talk about: love, peaceful, feeling strong, feeling grateful. These are other emotions that are in those 2 books. And so we'll be coming out with some wristbands with those emotions on them as well. That's the first step of building a foundation for emotional intelligence, is building your emotion vocabulary and being able to then name and identify and become aware of what emotion you're feeling as a very young child. And then it just builds. It builds on that.
This is incredible, Renee. Well, so appreciate the work and the vision that you have, making an impact in my household, and I know households around the world. And best luck in your future projects and endeavors that you're working on. And thank you so much for just making us better today.
You're so welcome, and thank you. If there's anything I could ever do for you, reach out to me.
We appreciate it. We'll look forward to it. We'll see you, Renee. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Renee.
So much. Bye.
Well, we hope you enjoyed that as much as Carolyn and I did. We'll have all information, of course, and links on where you can find all these great resources and products that we talked about. And also want to encourage you to check out our website, loveworksleadership.org. That is your one-stop shop to learn all things leadership, and also to discover what is Carolyn's cell phone number. So you can text her any question that you have at any time, any day, and she'll be right there to respond.
Hey, that's right. If you got any musical suggestions, any influencers I should be following or share about, like Michael said, my phone number is on the website.
Hey, Carolyn, before we go, we have another fabulous guest coming up next week.
We do. Her name is Janelle Schroy, and she's the founder and director of Adventure Clubs, which is where kids ages 4 to 10 actually come together online for small group adventures. And it's really neat. It's in the areas of conservation, world culture, visual and performing arts, and STEM. And so really neat, amazing story about Janelle, who travels full time with her whole family. Can you imagine traveling full time with your whole family? Must be an adventure.
I can half imagine, and hopefully the other half will get there after we are encouraged by the stories of Janelle next week.
I dig it. I dig it. Well, just a reminder, of course, go to our website. All of our resources are there, including my phone number, Michael's phone number too. You can hit him up. And just remember, real leaders, they don't blend in, but they stand out.
Dream big, everybody.
And do your dream.